Morning TikTok. I've got a little story, and I want to clarify something before I begin. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do hope that most people would agree I have an open mind. I'm not afraid to change my mind, which is a sign of actually having your mind and using your mind, is that you can change it. But I've got a story about a little bit of skullduggery, and this is again regarding the council. I think there's some bigger issues going on, much bigger than me. So there's a flat that I've got that I wanted to sell. So the council have the right of first refusal. That is that when you want to sell it, before you put it on the open market, they get first dibs. So you say, do you want to buy it? So last year, and I'm talking almost 12 months ago, it's about 11 months ago now, last year we approached the council and said, do you want to buy this flat? Now, they just said no, they're not doing a buyback scheme, they have no interest in buying back flats, which I thought was odd because there's always a shortage of housing association, in the old terms, council flats. There's always a shortage. So I just thought that's odd that they don't want to buy it. We haven't even discussed price yet. You know, they could have had it at a slight discount or whatever because they're a cash buyer and it feels good to sell back to the council. Anyway, they said no, so we put it on the open market. Now, the strange thing is that at some point, and this, I don't think this was my doing, but at some point a RICS chartered surveyor went and did a valuation of some flats in the same block. Now I think it was my neighbour who was getting a remortgage done because I discussed it with him, and the RICS chartered surveyor basically came back saying no, they wouldn't be prepared to value it. They valued it at zero because it was on an industrial estate, which it's not. I mean, if you know anything about London or live in London, you're always near commercial premises. That's the beauty of being in London, is that there's a corner shop on every corner. There's mechanics or builders merchants or whatever type of industry or shops. There was always something nearby. Even in central London, there's Leyland SDM, round the corner from my office. So to say that it was on an industrial estate is a stretch, But also, I have another flat on the same estate, and that one isn't on an industrial estate. So it's very strange. I said to the guy trying to get the remortgage, I said, that's just a surveyor being silly. For some reason, they don't want to lend on it. Just find a different mortgage lender. And get a good mortgage broker, and you'll get a remortgage, no problem. The problem is that I think the surveyor that went round and gave the valuation of zero has then added these comments to a database, because all RICS chartered surveyors use a panel of a database, and then all the mortgage companies will go to this database because that's the one that they use, and there might be another database and all these mortgage companies will use that database. So all the different chartered surveyors will all feed their information into a database. So then it means you don't have to send out another surveyor because everyone's using the same database. But as far as I know, there aren't many databases, and some of them are much bigger and used by a lot more. And so other smaller databases might only be used by a handful of mortgage lenders. The problem is that this surveyor who went round, she has added this nil valuation to a very large database that most lenders use, which means then obviously the guy that I know trying to remortgage them was restricted on what mortgage companies he could use, because most of them were using this nil valuation. So he used a different one and got his remortgage done, no problem. The impact that had on me was that when I came to sell, I think it's impacted the value, because a second surveyor was sent round to do a valuation and it was downvalued by around about £50,000. Now, obviously the council aren't buying it with a mortgage, they got megabucks, but it does still affect the value. And part of me, the sinister part, the skullduggery part, the bit that thinks, I hope you will agree, thinks outside the box, thinks, we offered this to the council. There was no survey or valuation or mortgage issues at that point. They said no. Then along comes someone who gives it a nil valuation, and then along comes someone else after that who then downvalues it. And the sinister part of me thinks, was that planned? Because what they didn't want to do is accept the price straight off because the valuation's high. But by engineering and manipulating the market, they pushed the value of the property down and got themselves an absolute bargain. It's something that I don't think all of this was engineered just for me. That's why I said this is much bigger than me. But I know that in the last year, councils have decided that they're going to buy back. They're getting rid of housing associations. They're taking it all back within control of the council because some sort of conservative policy means that there's no longer any incentive to have housing associations and subcontract it to a separate organisation. So the council are going to deal with everything themselves again. But it makes me think that if they go, right, we're going to start a buyback scheme, obviously before you start the buyback scheme, you want the prices to be cheap. So it makes me feel like last year there was something going on where they were managing to get rich chartered surveyors to go around and get values down by hook or by crook. So not only that, so this is not just a one-off case, not only that, when I did a 10,000 word dissertation when I was doing my postgraduate diploma in architecture, I did extensive research into the Haygate estate at Elephant and Castle, which is a different council, it's Southwark Council. And they did compulsory purchase orders on block after block after block. If you know anything about the Haygate estate, you would look at it and say it was a slum. It wasn't a slum, it was a thriving neighbourhood. The bit at central Elephant and Castle is above a market, which again was a thriving market. And the strange thing is that they're in Zone 1, and you had 3 or 4 bedroom flats in Zone 1. Now, I can't remember the values back then, but let's say it's at least $500,000. The strange thing is, the council obviously have got housing association tenants who they can move out straight away because they own those properties and they can take control of it. So they do that, which then, let's say a block's 50% housing association. If 50% of the people move out and all those properties are boarded up, and I mean metal grills on them to stop squatters and all the rest, that slum estate, what people thought was like a slum estate, but it was a thriving, busy estate, suddenly has become a ghost town overnight because 50% of the people have moved out and it's boarded up with metal boards. It looks intimidating, it looks scary, you haven't got passive surveillance, you haven't got people walking past. It suddenly becomes the absolute drug dealer's heaven of crack den chaos. And that downvalues an estate overnight. So again, the sinister part of me is like, well, the way that this has been engineered and the order it's been done is that these people are trying to sell, yeah, because it's compulsory purchase order, so they want to sell the flat because they have to, but the value of their flat's gone down because the council have turned it into a slum intentionally to get the prices down, to pay them less, to force them to move out. And I know for a fact that when I did the dissertation, let's say that it was worth 500,000, the people got something like 350 for these properties, which obviously if you're in Zone 1, you get 350. Well, all of a sudden you've got a family with 2 kids, 2 adults, and you've got 350,000 in London. That doesn't get you far. So this is a fact, there were stories of people having to be forced out of central London, Zone 1, Elephant and Castle, busy, vibrant area, you know, shops on your doorstep, really good tube connections, and they were moving out to Morden, which is Zone 5 or 6 if I remember correctly. And all of that is because they couldn't get the 700,000 or the 500,000 or whatever it was that their flat was worth. And that's the valuation that they had on their flat, let's say the previous year when they bought it, or when they remortgaged it recently. I know that values change, but the way that the council manipulated things and the sequence they did things meant that the people that were forced to sell didn't get the fair value of what their property should have been worth. So these are 2 cases, one of which I've got personal experience, the other one I've got extensive research experience, and it just makes me very doubtful of the way that councils work. I always naively thought councils were meant to help people. They give housing association, they give benefits. Yeah, don't mess with them. Always pay your council tax. You know, don't treat them with disrespect. Always pay your bills. It's not like a gas company or, you know, whatever, who've got 6 years to chase you. Council's a bit more powerful. But I just thought that they were the good guys. And this is 2 recent things. Well, one of them's not so recent. It's about 10 years ago. 2 things now, both on a very similar subject, that just make me feel like they are exerting their power in an extremely unfair way. Let me know your thoughts.